Are we on?
We're on.
We're on. Welcome, good evening, World Industrial Design Day 2020, live from the Bob Hawke building at UniSA. I'm Peter Coombs, the State Chair of the Design Institute of Australia, and on behalf of the DIA, we'd like to acknowledge the Kaurna people, the traditional custodians whose ancestral lands we're meeting upon today, and to all First Nations on lands now known as Australia. The DIA respectfully recognises elders past, present and emerging, and we celebrate the innovation, creativity and ingenuity of the world's oldest living design culture. We recognise and respect their cultural heritage, beliefs and spiritual relationship with the land, and we acknowledge the continuing importance of this land to the Kaurna people living today. World Industrial Design Day. We're celebrating the amazing power of design for everyday life, recognising the value and benefits of design, products, services which make our lives easier and more efficient. From commonplace items, appliances, tools, devices and accessories to intricately designed transit networks, infrastructure systems, even digital platforms, apps, etc. Design infiltrates our daily lives and practices, whether we are conscious of it or not. So please join me in welcoming our panellists for World Industrial Day 2020. But before that, I believe Mr. Dan McLean has words of wisdom for us.
Thank you, Peter. Not sure about words of wisdom, but I've got words. Yeah, thanks very much, Peter, and welcome to everyone here in person and online to World Industrial Design Day. In conjunction with the World Industrial Design Day event, we're also launching this year's third annual Work in Progress exhibition from the product and industrial design students here at UniSA. It's an initiative we started a couple of years ago, and it's a little bit more raw than our end of year exhibition, and really gives an insight into the processes that our students in product and industrial design here at UniSA go through. Obviously, the last few months have been challenging, and the staff and students have had to adapt to a very different study environment, taking programs online overnight. And I'd like to take this opportunity to congratulate all of the staff at UniSA in the product and industrial design area, but mostly the students who have managed to thrive in this environment. I think at times they thought they weren't thriving, but we're looking at the work thinking it's been pretty good. My colleague Andrew here, looking after the postgrad students, would agree, hopefully. We haven't released the grades yet though, so that's next week. Yeah, the World Industrial Design Day event is a good chance for us to launch our online exhibition. Andrew, I think we've got that ready to go. So we might just take you to the UniSA Industrial Design Graduates webpage, and you can check out the virtual 3D gallery that we have up online. There's been some hard work put in by the exhibition committee over the past couple of weeks to get this happening. Just up there. So if you're watching at home and you've found this live stream, look for the other button on that UniSA Industrial Design Graduates webpage and find the online gallery, which has just jumped off of that tab there. Yeah, so maybe we'll go full screen on that. Just bear with us. What's the mouse cursor now? Answer's dead. Okay, well, we had that working. So anyway, find that on on the homepage in your own time. Perhaps we'll come back to that a little bit later tonight. In the meantime, I think we'll get started with the World Industrial Design Day panel discussion, and I might take this opportunity to introduce our panelists tonight. So we have with us from Detmold, Sarah Nielsen, UniSA Industrial Design alumni, who has been responsible for the design of, amongst other things, biodegradable packaging or products for the packaging industry here in Adelaide. We have, next to Sarah, we have Ed Warren, who is one of our postgraduate students here at UniSA. Ed's currently in his final semester of study and has been working on an electric vehicle. We have Andrew Rogers, who is another UniSA graduate. I guess we'll call it UniSA. Amongst other things, he is a fellow of the DIA, founder of his own business, Andrew Rogers Industrial Design. Do I say how many years of experience? A lot of experience locally and internationally, and has had clients including BAE Systems, Zeiss, Saab, Clipsal, Caroma, Chiron Audio, and has been most recently working on developing the NED face shield. Next to Andrew, we have UniSA product design lecturer Martin Franey, another alumni from our program here. I've known Marty a while. We've worked together professionally. Marty has experience in a bunch of different industries. I met Marty at APC Computing, but Marty's worked at other places, Electrolux, and is also the founder of Earthship Ecohomes. And I think your claim to fame there, Marty, is it's the first council-approved Earthship in Australia. So hopefully we get to hear a little bit about that tonight. Next to Marty, we have Andrew Richards, Richo. Again, UniSA alumni from the Industrial Design program, founder of the Adelaide Design Network, or co-founder of the Adelaide Design Network, and also Richo.com. Richo Co, sorry. Involved in marketing and business development, amongst other things. And I think Andrew will offer an interesting perspective to industrial design here tonight. Moving along, we've got a big panel here tonight. Ren Wang, who is has just finished a semester of study here with us in Adelaide on exchange from Carleton University in Canada. What a time to come on exchange to Adelaide. You've probably seen 3 months of being stuck in your apartment. So I hope you do get a little bit of time to get out and about and see some of the wonderful things Adelaide has to offer. But Ren has been giving us some really good insights during our third year studio classes. And lastly, on screen, live from Singapore, is Lisa Hood, another UniSA alumni. Has a lot of experience in the consumer design area, including Maytag, Kohler, and is currently the Associate Director of Beauty Products, I believe it is, Lisa, at Procter & Gamble, based in Singapore. So, yeah, please welcome our panel, and then we'll get stuck into some Q&A. All right. I feel like I need to be sitting down as well for this, too. I'd like to also introduce my co-host tonight, Deb Wallace. I don't know if you want to come up here, Deb, or should we sit down there? Deb, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself as well?
I'm an old designer as well. You can tell from my grey hair, so I've been around a fair while. done all sorts from Sabco injection molding. Used to draw the tools as well as the product in pencil. So I've been around a fair while.
Terrific. Thanks, Deb. And I don't think I actually introduced myself, but Peter kind of did. I'm Dan McLean, and I'm the Program Director of the Bachelor of Design Product Design program here at UniSA, and also another UniSA alumni. So, yeah, we're all representing here tonight. Well, being World Industrial Design Day, for those of you watching at home or wherever you're watching now, feel free to contribute comments through the YouTube stream. We'd love to have your questions coming in from home. And you in the audience as well, please shout out if you have any questions. We want to keep this event very, very conversational. I think just to kick things off, we might just introduce a kind of general topic around the theme of this year's World Industrial Design Day, which is around the design of everyday things. And we'll start this one on a real positive note. Australia has recently experienced record drought, fire, now COVID-19. None of these issues are going to go away and have certainly become features of everyday life. Design should not be seen as a quick fix, but it does present new opportunities. In the panel's opinion, what do you think some of those opportunities might be for, I would be interested in what you think about Adelaide having some of these opportunities, Australia having some of these opportunities, and internationally, what are the opportunities? So if anyone's, Sarah's holding a microphone already, but that doesn't mean you have to go first, Sarah. Just shout out if you've got any ideas on what those opportunities might be.
I think obviously, local manufacturing is a big opportunity. Obviously Detmold's taken up that as well, and just understanding that, if your supply chain has stuff coming in from other countries, situations like this can obviously have a huge impact on getting the resources you need to make your product. And so, yeah, bringing manufacturing back here to Australia will bring new opportunities and jobs.
I certainly think the recent spate of crises has highlighted a parochial bent where it's supporting local manufacturing, but also shop local, not just necessarily make it here, but actually buy here. And there's a bunch of initiatives that are going on with respect to providing e-commerce for local shopping, so that we can facilitate the supply chain after it actually gets manufactured, to enable people to purchase locally manufactured goods, but also a bunch of initiatives around identifying what is locally manufactured. So we do a bunch of manufacturing here, but we don't make a song and dance about it and expose it to the world as being a great locally made product. So certainly an opportunity further down the supply chain.
I'm holding the other microphone. I think one of the most important things as a designer is being able to design product that's suitable for your culture, for your actual close by city. So now we're being given an opportunity that because we've got these loss of supply chains, loss of product coming in from interstate or overseas, we can now get the opportunity to design product that's suitable for our direct environment and for our people. And I think that's something that's being lost in many cases to the worldwide supply chain. We all have to put up with whatever is available because it's cheap and cost effective to manufacture. I think this is going to give us some opportunities to see some products that are more suitable for us as individual people.
I'd say there's a big opportunity for designers to respond to some of those natural disasters that Dan mentioned, things like droughts and fires, climate change in general. So yeah, things like, and my practice crosses over into architecture, and architects are going to be needing to specify products that we industrial designers design, things like better, potentially automated bushfire shutters and perhaps better ways of, recycling our water and things like that to deal with drought.
Just on the note of sort of local manufacturing, I find it very interesting that with all of the events of COVID, we find ourselves as a society moving a lot closer to using, like making use of our technology more and communicating through more virtual means. And I've seen a lot of initiatives online for open source design projects where the plans for designs are released, sort of just being spread to the design community, and then people can choose to manufacture locally. And I'd be interested to see sort of how this interplay of like both having an increased use of these sort of long distance technologies along with localized manufacturing evolve and take design into the future.
So one of the things that I see in the world at the moment is the most constant thing in life is change. And so really what you're talking about is change with open source and people being able to add on to it and actually adapt. So that's pretty important. What about constant change or building in adaptability? It's a bit like the face mask. You change to constant a product to something else. But what other examples can you see where change is built into the product or adaptability?
Towards me specifically. Well, I know for a fact that a lot of designs are like 3D CAD like printing files are shared like pretty widely online, and there's a large maker culture around that. I also find it interesting that things like furniture as well. I've seen there's an initiative called Open Desk. I don't know if it's still active or not, but I know a few years prior they were releasing a lot of sort of IKEA flavor furniture where the designs were like being sort of being made so that people had free access to them. They can modify the files if they want, and encourage people, instead of ordering it from them directly, to look for a manufacturer locally to make it suit their needs.
Marty, I wonder if this might be an opportunity for you to talk about a course that you're interested in bringing into UniSA, and that might stimulate some discussion here around product design and service and maintenance of everyday products as well.
We were chatting the other day and we thought it would be fun to do what we sort of thought would be called the repair studio. So the idea being that students would repair stuff, potentially their own stuff or their family stuff, or it could be a bit of a community service for anyone really to approach us with something that's broken. And, we would learn stuff by fixing it. And of course, it's a great outcome if we can actually fix it easily, potentially with a little bit of 3D printing or hopefully not gaffer tape. But, part of our role is to make things, look beautiful, and gaffer tape doesn't really tick that box. But the idea is to have some sort of sustainability outcomes and learn as we go. Is that what you had in mind, Dan?
That's something like that, Marty. And I just wonder if any of the other panelists in their professional experience have approached that topic before. Often when we're designing a new product, design for maintenance often doesn't come into it, unfortunately. And I just wonder if that's a bit of a trend that we might be seeing moving forward.
I can speak. Is that working? Yep. Yeah, I can speak to that. I think it's really something that I see happening more now than we had in, say, 20 years ago. Is that better? Yeah. More 20 years ago, when technology was such that 3D printing wasn't in everybody's lounge room and wasn't in everybody's shed, we spent more time making things with our hands and building go-karts and flying foxes and swings and things, which were an opportunity for us to get out and engage with our environment. What I find now is happening a lot with the 3D printing is that, yes, things are open source, but there seems to be, in my opinion, far too much copy and paste. It used to be copy and paste in a graphic environment where you can cut and clip a bit of clip art around. Now it's becoming copy and paste for 3D printing. And I think that's diluting the effort or reducing the amount of effort that it takes to build a product. And I think I'd like to talk about the little face shield that we recently developed. We I flew into Adelaide after being in Shanghai. We landed in Adelaide Airport. We were all very relieved to land at the airport. We were greeted by someone from Border Force. They had a full face mask on, so we couldn't see their face, we couldn't see their eyes. 2-metre tall guy stomping down the cabin, handing out pieces of paper, didn't say anything to anyone. Children starting to get a bit upset and cry, and the whispers were getting more and more concerned because we thought, well, we've got out of trouble, but now we're landing in Adelaide and we've got this guy stomping through. Immediately at that point, I thought we have to do something with this PPE to make it more personable so that people can see that, yes, they're protecting themselves, but also you can see the face behind the mask. So that's what inspired us to do the Ned's Head face shield. And I really thought it was going to be a bit of a hobby to keep us busy during this lockdown period. And I'm really lucky. I've spent a lot of time and money building up a workshop. So I shut myself in my workshop for 2 weeks. I made, I think, 32 prototypes out of various materials and foam. I had people constantly saying you should be 3D printing it. Everyone can 3D print it. It only takes 2 hours to make one on a 3D printer, or a day to make 3. We use some very normal manufacturing technology. The machine that we're using can produce more than 2,000 units an hour. And we designed this in a way so that it could be put in place for not only 1 or 2 people in an emergency, but it could be rolled out very rapidly for mass production in Adelaide, but also moved locally around the world very cheaply. So the tooling is about $500-600. You simply need a couple of presses and you can be punching these products out in a couple of days. And we were lucky enough to pick up a contract with SA Health. So we're producing 56,000 of these units for SA Health at the moment. My studio has been turned upside down and is turned into a manufacturing and quality control workshop. But the workshop and the design area is still operational. So we're doing other designs at the same time. So while I think open source is really valuable, I think that it's really important to understand the manufacturing processes of mass production. 3D printing is great for prototyping. Laser cutting is great for doing those small specialized products. But there are times when you need to roll out hundreds of thousands of products, and that's where true mass production and being able to understand what's available in your own city is really important.
Yeah, I don't think we've reached that point yet where we've heard all this hype before, haven't we? 3D printing is going to replace all these traditional manufacturing processes, which is, I don't think it's the case anyway. Sarah, I know your company worked on an interesting product during this crisis as well. Did you have anything you could tell us about the process behind, I guess, the classic word pivot that we've heard that went on with that one? And maybe tell us about some of the processes that you go through designing new products in your business.
Yes, I guess the mask project is the biggest one our company's been working on for SA Health and the national stockpile, 145 million masks. So that's been a massive challenge for the business, but a fantastic opportunity for them to take on. And I guess in my role, we're sort of rapid prototyping is what our main function is in the design team. And we do use 3D printing, but we definitely use it for prototyping purposes, which is great. We do it so we can help move the process of refining a design along. So we mostly do paper cardboard products. We do some plastic products to support the products we currently make. So say a coffee cup, it needs a lid, which is made of plastic. And if someone wants a custom lid with different features or their branding embossed into it, they'll want to see a sample of that before we can sort of move through the design process. And so instead of going to the supplier to get, some pilot tooling made, weeks go past, a lot of money goes past to get that done, just to see the first iteration. We'll use our 3D printer to 3D print molds that will vacuum form with a little vacuum former we have, just so we can get through maybe 5-6 different iterations going back and forth that the customer can look at. Obviously, the detail's not as refined as a production sample, but it's enough for them to see how it looks. Not everybody, is designers, the people that we're selling to, and they can't always visualize something off of the screen. They want to hold it in their hand. They want to look at it, see the depth of the embossing or the size of the logo, how it looks across a range of products. So that's where we use the 3D printing. Or often, if we're developing a custom size cup as well, to make that by hand in perfect, symmetrical product, that would be very difficult. So we've often done a thin wall 3D print so someone could see what the profile looks like and make sure that, it's going to fit in with the rest of the range or even the volume. They've been brewing coffee in it in our precision range that we developed.
That's fascinating. Thank you. Lisa, I think you were gesticulating there a little earlier. Would you like to add to that pivot or change or adaptability?
Oh, yeah, no, I can try. I'm having a little bit of difficulty hearing. Can you guys hear me?
Perfectly.
Excellent, excellent. No, I think a big discussion point that we have is obviously with the current situation, people are spending a lot more time at home. People are by themselves, people are in isolation. I'm speaking specifically with COVID. And I think coming out of this, obviously, I think people's discretionary income could be impacted in the coming months. And I think in terms of design, it's going to be not just about meeting a functional or a practical need for our products, but also what is the sort of emotional needs that we're able to fulfill? What is that element we can add to well-being and people's sort of daily happiness? Because I think our products are going to have a lot more scrutiny when people have a reduced income to spend money. So I think the role of the designer is, just really questioning how meaningful is the product? How much can we bake into that meaning beyond just consumable goods? And obviously I'm in, fast moving consumer goods, but I think we're really asking ourselves a lot of those questions. And then also I think after all of the environmental issues that have happened more recently in the bushfires in Australia, obviously the focus on responsible design and sustainability is a hourly discussion, I think, across all of our industries, which is super empowering for industrial design because I know, pretty much everyone's passionate about that area. So I think they're the main things that I see.
Just following up on that emotional design side of things, Lisa, apart from Procter & Gamble products, have you got any role models or any good examples that are happening globally that you could mention?
Yeah, that's a great, and even like this is not necessarily just industrial design, but a lot of what I've even noticed, even in terms of the way that the situations are being communicated and helping people understand like what to do in this situation, what makes sense, especially as with the current health crisis, it's changing hourly what the guidance is. And even in terms of informational design, digital design, the way that things are being communicated, I see a tremendous amount of role in design to that and being really clear, transparent, but also calming and emotionally calming so that people do, understand the situation and do what's best for themselves and their families. So I think I've very much seen it digitally, hugely over here.
Great. Andrew Richards, I'm just wondering if you have, from your marketing and business point of view, any model companies here in Adelaide that you think are doing a great job of pivoting over this time of crisis, or maybe talk about some of those things that companies here in Adelaide could do with design to improve their businesses or improve their products. Maybe following on from what Sarah, Andrew, and Lisa have just said, I think there's probably some opportunities in that for Adelaide businesses.
Certainly. Being in product development and go-to-market strategy and what have you, I'm quite often at the leading edge of conversations with organisations about bringing new product to market and pivoting and what have you. And just thinking about your question, there's actually not too many that I can mention. But listening to the previous discussion, one large change that I have seen is an emphasis, because of the recent spate of crises that we've had, is an emphasis on the ethics behind our supply chain. And that numerous companies are really digging deep and trying to find out what the right thing to do, the socially responsible, the ethical thing to do with respect to developing new product. This has come out of a rise and a growth in the traceability and the ethics of our supply chains in industries like the fashion industry and the food industry and what have you globally. And that is rapidly going to make an effect on the product development industry. There is numerous businesses and numerous technologies, some of which have come out of Australia, that are developing quite clever ways of understanding the full extent of our supply chains, where our raw materials come from, where our sub-assemblies come from, so that you can't be a squeaky clean first world tier 1 organisation with gold-plated virtues on the front door without digging deep and actually understanding what greater impact you have in the world with respect to what people don't see. So that's a large effect that I'm seeing at the moment.
Fascinating. Marty, I wonder if you might want to follow on from that conversation about, ethics in our products, I suppose. And, one of your areas of specialization is sustainable product design and sustainable architecture. Are you aware of any, tracking systems at the moment, or I guess almost educational tools for consumers, but also designers themselves? Often we're specifying these materials and processes without having, I guess, a real knowledge of impact sustainably and ethically.
Yeah, I saw a real interesting presentation from one of our postgraduate students, so a doctoral student. He's developed a system that uses the blockchain technology used by cryptocurrencies to track all those interactions from extracting raw materials to your iPhone or whatever. All those materials that go into it can be tracked right back to their source every step of the way. So yeah, I think what you're talking about, Andrew, is coming, if not already. So we'll be able to track all that social and ecological impacts much easier.
Terrific. I want to come back to that topic in a sec, but we've had a question from our virtual audience, Paul Huxtable, and the question for the panel is, where and how does the panel see opportunities to influence change in responsible use of materials such as thermoplastics? Lisa, would you like to kick this one off? I'm wondering if Procter & Gamble might be a major consumer of thermoplastics.
Was it food plastics? Is that what you said?
Thermoplastics.
Oh, thermoplastic. Yeah, no, I think definitely in terms of role of design, in terms of material selection, absolutely is critical, because I think some of these choices that we can make, especially on such a large scale as consumer product goods, it can have tremendous effect. But I think also in terms of product during use, how can people, have a great experience, but still, a responsible experience, even in terms of water usage and what have you, so even beyond the materiality of the product. I think that's probably some of the largest thing. And there's a tremendous amount right now of material science in terms of getting to sustainable materials that can, do essentially what a lot of the non-sustainable materials can do, but it's about getting them at mass scale. And so, there's a lot of exciting work in that industry, and I know many, many, many companies are working on this as well. So I think there's a lot to be done, but I think immediately the role of the designer, it's not just the material spec and it ends there. I think it is the entire life cycle of the product. How long do they keep the product for? What about the product in use when it gets to disposal? I mean, not everything's recycled, even though you put the little number on it and everyone thinks it is. So there's a lot of, infrastructure about recycling. But I think it's a sustainability and recyclability, all of that, it's a very complex discussion. But I think thinking about it more holistically than just speccing the right plastic is a more holistic approach to thinking about it. Does that make sense?
It certainly does. I'm just thinking of the days when I used to work at Sabco, and we used to design rubbish bins. The rule was we had to design them to break. But Sulo bins were brilliant because they didn't break, and guess who's around today? It's not the bin from Sabco. In terms of supplying, and we're talking about sustainability and eco and environmental, what about the IPP, the Indigenous Procurement Program? Does anyone have any experience in the supply chain with that? Because you were talking about social diversity. So that's another interesting thing that's certainly building up with 10% of supply in large companies and government need to be IPP. So that's certainly something that's coming up and really, really important. It's great.
I have had some recent experience dealing with an agribusiness company that have almost got their ILUA over the line, which is the Indigenous Land Use Agreement. So they plan to develop a facility on traditional land. And the Indigenous Land Use Agreement goes into great detail about the collaboration that they have with the local community and how to support and how to grow outside of the core industry that this business is dealing with. So there will be the development of, so this is in logistics, if you will, but there is emphasis around building up a local Indigenous seed business as part and parcel of this initiative, and numerous other things. And it's a really fantastic process to go through. It's the first time I've been through it. Incredibly gratifying to see how a nuts and bolts, regular, traditional Western business can actually be transformed into something of far more social value. And there's some really great initiatives there.
Thank you.
I want to speak a little bit on recycled plastics. One of the biggest problems that I see with these is that most people don't really, or most industries don't really place any value on it as a resource. It gets used as a virgin material. It comes out of the factory. It's perfect in every regard. It can be molded down to 0.1, 0.2 millimeter wall sections, and then designers design to that criteria. Whereas if you think about it a little bit more carefully in your design process, does that product need to be down to 0.1 millimeters? Can you get away with 1 or 2 millimeter wall section? And if you can do that, can you then introduce more recycled material? Because you don't have to refine that recycled material so much. The other thing is finish and fashion. Everybody wants everything perfect and shiny, and every single item has to be exactly the same as each other. If we can start designing some difference into the product, so part of the design process and the manufacturing process means that products start looking a little bit different to each other. For example, going back 50, 100 years ago, every chair was slightly different to each other because the materials that we used coming from the trees were slightly different. Now we expect every single product to be exactly the same as each other. And there can't be a single blemish on it. And if there is, it gets rejected. One of the things that we looked at when we were doing the face shield in recent times is the supply chain in Australia. And it's really difficult to find a supply chain that can deliver recycled materials. The face shield that we're working on is actually made from PET, which is, we've managed to put 30% recycled PET into the product. And the only manufacturing plant that we can find in the region is in New Zealand. And in fact, we have to pay 10% more to use a recycled material than to use a virgin material. The other problem that we're faced with is that although everything that we've used is recyclable in the product that we've designed, having the facilities to recycle that material are simply not available. And that comes down to the size of our country, the volume of product that we use. Even though we've got tens of thousands of tons of material being stockpiled, there simply isn't enough demand for that product to build a recycling plant for it. So we are going to have to do something about it because we have a new policy in the country which forbids export of rubbish. So no plastic can be exported out of Australia. So are we going to just keep on piling it up until we've got no more room, or are we going to do something about it? So I think designers have a responsibility to start including some of that material in their products.
I got one.
Interested in hearing from Sarah and Marty on this one as well. Yeah.
Just real quick. I think Lisa mentioned the little number. The problem with the little number, the recycling number, is that it only goes up to 7. So I'm calling for more numbers for better recycling of different plastics.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was just going to speak on the material discussion as well in recycling. And I guess the war on waste has been a huge topic of conversation, particularly for a business like Detmold, because we make paper cardboard products. And with everyone's 2025 roadmap of needing to get rid of single-use plastics and have more recycled content in their packaging. So the ARL that's coming in is going to be one of those things that's going to help people make sure that their products get recycled and that there is a stream for it. But I think the interesting thing is the education piece. So not only for consumers to understand that paper isn't just paper, cardboard isn't just cardboard, that they've all got different properties, just like plastics do, which make them easier to recycle or even non-recyclable, depending what additives they've put in the paper pulp. And also educating people who we're designing for that also, might not understand all the differences between the materials and they're just worried about functionality. And so as a designer, we do have the power to help them make a better choice and let them know that, okay, they need the functionality that's going to, hold their food. And so, the grease or whatever doesn't soak through to the other side. But, there's a couple choices and one is recyclable, one's not, and helping them guide them in that decision to make the right choice so they can, get the ARL put on it, or at least make sure that it's going to have a possible second life for some paper pulp for that circular economy instead of the linear economy.
Yeah, I think one thing I noticed just personally is it's difficult to know what products I can actually throw in the recycling, which ones I need to throw out in the trash. Like I just had a pair of old shoes the other day I had to get rid of, and I can kind of pick out all the materials in the shoe, and I know some might be able to be recycled or not, but then they're all like glued together and stuff as well. So, I am at university and studying product design, so hopefully I have at least a little idea about that. But then what about all the people who are, the consumers out there? They must be just as confused as me, right? So maybe there needs to be some change there in terms of the systems of recycling.
Yeah, I definitely agree. We went and visited Murph recycling sorting facility here in Adelaide, and the amount of things that was in this giant pile of stuff that people had put in their yellow bins was really like astonishing. Lots of pairs of shoes, whole shoes going through, gas bottles. They had engine blocks. They said they get lots of them, like just crazy things because people are trying to do the right thing. Classic example is the soft plastics that, you can recycle now at Woolworths, but people just hear, oh, you can recycle it. So they're putting it in the yellow bin, and there was so much soft plastics there. So they're trying to do the right thing, but they're just not quite there. They're just that extra education piece and labeling that I think we'll get there eventually, but, still a lot of work to go so people know what to do.
Sort of just to jump in here, obviously as a student, I definitely don't have the most sort of complete perspective on how the industry works, but I always felt that in my previous experience in high school, where I was part of the environmental association at my school, I found that a big part of like getting people to sort of participate and also sort of make the right decisions with recycling and environmentally conscious actions would really fall into convenience. A lot of times, a lot of times I find that people just don't have the time to like take things apart or like spend that extra few minutes in the day to research whether or not something's recyclable just because they're so busy. I live at home with people with autoimmune disorders like various chronic health concerns, and I find that a lot of times it's just too much to ask of them when they're just trying to get by. And I think a lot of times the onus is placed on the consumer or the individual to take action, when really a lot of these sort of large scale sort of changes that we really need in order to achieve more sustainable systems and society really should come from the infrastructure and a larger scale sort of initiative as a whole. I know for a fact that there is an organization called WIP, which is a partnership between Amazon and TerraCycle, which likes to take normally non-recyclable materials and find a way to repurpose them, where they're sort of looking at a milkman model of selling products to consumers instead of having these disposable packaging like that you get with your products that you order online. They instead sort of offer it as that you continue to use and like have loyalty with the same product, and you just get the product in a metal container or some sort of reusable container that you then return when you go back, or when you buy more, when you order more food on, or when you order more of the product online. And I think that while it is important that we all become more conscious and push for more sustainable and environmentally conscious actions as individuals, we should also look at how we can ask our governments and our social sort of infrastructures to change to better accommodate a more environmental system.
I agree 100% that I don't think that as a society we should be expecting consumers to be separating the rubbish into the different grades. I mean, it doesn't matter if you've got 300 numbers of different plastics. Why should we have to, as consumers, separate them into individual packets to make it cheaper and easier for someone to remanufacture and then resell it to us? Part of the process should be, if you manufacture the product, part of the cost should be for the recovery of that raw material at the end. Making a product cheaper and cheaper so that you can sell more and more and make more and more profits isn't really contributing to the circular economy. As Deb said earlier, you make a rubbish bin cheap so that it can fall apart and they have to go and buy another one. It's great for the company, doesn't really help the family. And I think one of the other things that we need to start looking at is driving up the price of products so that people understand that there's a value in that product and they keep it for longer. I think none of us are rich enough to buy cheap products because they fall apart too quickly and you have to buy another one. Isn't it much better to save a little bit of money and buy the better quality product that lasts 5 or 10 times longer? I know in Europe that there are some new price tags that are being put out which explains the value of the product. So this chair costs $10, it will last you for 2 years and therefore it is worth this much per month. Or you can buy another chair which is $200, which will last for 20 years and has a completely different value chain. So I think we need to start identifying the actual value of the raw materials and adding value to the product in that way.
Only government tariffs on imported plastic granulates. So higher cost, so that we are encouraged to use recycling.
And I still can't understand how it can be cheaper to dig oil out of the ground, put it through a refinery and turn it into plastic than it is to take plastic that is almost already plastic and melt it and turn it into a new plastic. To me, it doesn't make sense.
I was wondering if I could interject. We've got a couple comments from our live viewer base. First one being for the panel. How has COVID-19 changed your process of design?
Well, it's changed where I conduct my process of design mainly. Yeah, I don't know. My project this semester has been looking at shared transportation, which, there's obvious implications from COVID about whether or not people might be actually willing to participate in shared transportation systems. I mean, certainly public transport, you saw a lot of reduced demand there. So I'm not sure how I changed my approach to that, though. It's kind of tricky for me. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess for me, it's not changed a great deal. I mean, obviously getting into the office to be able to design and make prototypes, but I guess from dealing with clients, we've often got clients globally anyway, and utilising Skype or Zoom for all those meetings, and you can engage and send images and show stuff on your screen and have that collaboration still with your design team and your customers. So it hasn't been too much of a hindrance, I suppose.
I've been teaching online.
How's that going for you, Marty?
Well, yeah, we all had to get used to the Zoom buttons. That's another discussion about interface design. That wasn't so good. Hope the people at Zoom are listening. But yeah, I think for us designers, we're actually fairly unscathed because we were able to keep working online, via email and systems like Zoom and Skype, etc. So we carried on from home.
Yeah, I think I can maybe add to this. So we have a relatively dispersed team. So people in Beijing, Singapore, Japan, what have you. And I think, for right now, everyone's getting along, the business keeps moving. But I think the big challenge in terms of managing creative and managing the creative work is really just keeping the inspiration there. And especially when you're co-developing a project where you really need to bounce ideas off each other, it is it is quite difficult not being able to do that in person. So actually feeling a tremendous amount of appreciation for people who are things like freelancers and what have you, that actually have to do this on a daily basis as the way that they make their career. So, you know, creatively collaborating with people at a distance, it's been a huge learning for me, because, you know, I've been very much a corporate designer for years, very much with the face-to-face interaction. So I think for me, it's just how to keep the creativity alive when you very much thrive off of that interaction and brainstorming.
I am not really a designer, but as part of my involvement in the Adelaide Design Network, I speak with designers on a daily basis. And the big thing that I've witnessed in the last 3 months is the designers need to readdress how it is that they actually develop their own businesses. So these are designers outside of internal design, company design departments and what have you. But sole trader designers and small design firms are certainly thinking in very innovative terms how it is that they spend more time developing their brand to understand where the next opportunity comes from. That has been the overwhelming thing that I've seen a lot of the design community here in Adelaide doing, is deep diving, understand what it is that they're good at, and actually logically thinking how they can propel themselves through the supply chain to offer more than just the design services that they have traditionally done, to self-brand themselves in a more effective manner, but also to offer greater value than the designer products, to challenge organisations in what they're doing and how they're doing it, to provide a different perspective and propel themselves through the value chain. So.
I think what the COVID shutdown has given for me has reinforced my methodology. I've always had a workshop, well, except for a short period in history, which I seriously concerned myself about not having the workshop. But now I have my own CNC equipment. I have, you know, full woodworking shop. I have laser cutters, laser printers, 3D printers. I have a studio assistant. So we work together. We kicked out all the office staff, and my design assistant and myself, we worked throughout the 6 weeks, I think it was, that we were working alone. We adopted Zoom, which was very interesting. I think I've had 16 video presentations in this period, which learned very quickly that you need to light yourself better when you're sitting at your computer so that people can see what you look like. But being able to immerse myself in my work in the workshop has been a real joy and an experience that is something that designers have very, very, very lucky to be able to do that. Many other people that I have contacted with have been locked away at home. They've had their computer, their little window into the world. As designers, we have a lot of access to different tools, equipment, skill sets, communication tools, all of these things that we take for granted. And I think that having this experience of working on our own in these kinds of environments gives us an understanding of how lucky we are to be working in this kind of environment. Mm-hmm. So I think that we are uniquely exposed to so much technology that if we can start communicating that to some people outside in other industries, that we can probably help and benefit a lot of other people.
I can't say that I feel like this semester has definitely been very different for me in my usual design process, for sure. Being inside a very small one-room apartment while trying to build a fairly tall physical prototype certainly had its challenges, things that I had not had to consider when I was studying back at home. But I think most notably the biggest change for me, just in terms of my process with COVID, is how I did my research and testing of my prototypes. I attempted to do a little bit more experimental version of product testing. So I designed a bulk food dispenser. an automated sort of machine that dispenses food from a container like you would have at a bulk food store, but instead of having it just be a manual lever, it includes all of these scale, like the weighing functions and calculating the price and so forth. And really what I wanted to see was how a user would interact with that interface and also sort of the physicality of the product. And while certainly that wasn't something that could be done physically, I attempted to have people sort of interact with the prototype virtually through Zoom, which I found was a very interesting learning experience that I feel that would be would have some good educational value going forward with just working with people in like remote locations.
I'll move on to a couple more questions. Next one is, do you think the advent of hardware chains offering cheap finished products instead of the materials to make things has had a negative impact on our creativity?
I guess I was just thinking that sometimes that just adds a challenge, inspiration, when you have to use something different, maybe a different material. I mean, obviously, with the recycling that we were talking about before, and they're looking to make sure that packaging has a high percentage of recycled content, which does then tend to yield less higher quality paperboard to manufacture with. So I guess that brings the challenge of the lower performance and functionality, but also appearance. You know, recycled board has that gritty look. You can see sort of discolored particles in it, but I guess you just use that, take the inspiration and make sure that you can develop something that is still beautiful and functional, and not let it be the main hindrance, I guess, of your design.
I'll say something. I think all the low quality products that tend to be purchased from the hardware chains perhaps drive some creativity because you have to go fix them. They break so quickly.
Well, I don't know about creativity, but it certainly had a massive detriment to the local manufacturing, and raised some serious questions about how it is that we can compete outside of just on price. So I worked for an organisation in the early 2000s that had extraordinary market share in hardware type products, of the tune of 80, 90% in some categories. And within the space of maybe shy of a decade, they had been driven out of the industries that they once dominated by organisations, or at least by products that did not even meet our own Australian standards, our safety standards, ordinarily didn't even meet the requirements of the consumer, but came in at a price. So, from a designer's perspective, there ought to be great creativity around how to compete with those sort of economic challenges, not just from a design perspective, but again, stepping up the value chain to understand what it means from an overall business perspective and how you can compete with non-like-for-like competitive products.
I think there's also something a little bit more sinister than that. I think they also import poor quality tools, so that even if you wanted to make a good quality product from the materials that are available, you can't. So that forces you to buy more of the cheap products because you simply can't get the tools to make things yourself. And I think that's a real detriment. And I know Peter in the audience there would not be buying any of his hammers from Bunnings. It's simply no quality products, and you have to search really far into the rest of the world to find the good quality tools to help you to build those products that are needed.
I've got a question here from Anna Brown, who's watching the virtual show tonight. 20 plus years ago, the European Union brought in a very strict production and recycling rules. Anna's question is, do the panel believe it is an industrial product designer's role to also be part of the lobbying process to change policy at a government level?
I would say absolutely. That if this is the community that's actually developing the product, that they have a very loud voice and should step up to the plate and advocate for what they believe is right and infuse that into their designs.
One problem is standards. Often they're really hard to access. You have to pay a lot of money. I think they should be freely available, and often they're not mandatory either. So we have Australian standards, but you actually don't have to comply with them. So that seems goofy.
And also something else I find is large government corporations will go and buy the cheaper product that don't meet the Australian standards. And so, I mean, I know responsibly I want to follow the Australian standards, that you think it should be mandatory. If they're there, and like you say, they should be available. Just on that note, I have recently found them at the South Australian Business Network. Did you know that they're free there? There's a good library.
Yeah, I was just going to speak about, I think the designer should be involved, particularly noticing all the, plastic bags, but plastic product and bans going on around the world. Some of them happened really quickly, the next 3 months, plastic straws are out, plastic cutlery out, but without foreseeing what product is there to take its place, and other things like disposable coffee cups and stuff. Is there actually a material that's recyclable that has the same function, that's readily available, and the resources to replace all of those products in a whole region? And so we saw that some bans came in and then some sort of reversed a little or pushed out their date when people had to be compliant, because they hadn't thought that far ahead. Like a designer would like, okay, well, if we still need that functionality, but we have to change the material, how can we get to that? And is there actually a raw material that's available, or does one need to be developed, which would take a lot of time?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think just something to build, I was sort of talking about it before, but I think it's an incredibly complex topic. And I think even region to region, government to government actually take very different approaches and very different stances on recycling, materiality, what have you. So I think it's also about knowing the country or the region you're designing for, what is the most appropriate solution for that country. But then also, and I know it's overused a lot, but it's always talk, reduce, reuse, recycle. Recycle is really the last resort. And absolutely, by all means, we should be specifying recyclable stuff. But really, if you get into reduce and reuse, it really makes us question as a designer different business models. Can you go to a more quality product that's, is used a lot longer? Can you go to refillable situations or refillable solutions? And so I think it's just not go all the way to recycle, but actually think about the whole ecosystem of your product and what it lives in, and how can you be more sustainable in different avenues as well. But yeah, it's an extremely complex topic, and but great to be a part of, obviously.
We've got one last question from one of our first years. What do you think of organic materials as a future solution for products' environmental impact? For example, chitin compounds.
Okay, I think I've got this one because I did some Googling today and I found out that today is also World Mud Day. That's right, the 29th of June is World Mud Day, and I think that's a great way to start thinking about the properties of the materials that we designers should be using. Non-toxic, readily available, fun to work with, low embodied energy. So mud's an organic material. Well, is it really? I suppose it's more mineral or something. I think organic means plant-like things. Straw and hemp is one of my favorites. Bamboo, all those natural fibers that we relied on centuries ago. And in fact, you can make plastics out of those renewable, quick to grow plants. Soy, Andrew's just mentioned soy. Over to Andrew.
Soy makes a very good plastic material, and in fact, there's bonnets of some many cars running around Russia that are made out of the soy extract. So, very universal product. just needs a coat of paint and it looks beautiful. You don't even have to think about making out of tons and tons of virgin material.
One thing I would say on the organic materials thing, and I'm definitely no expert on this, but you have to be careful when you're mixing organic with, inorganic material. I've seen a lot of products, or I've seen a couple of examples of products where, for example, I saw a shoe where they took coffee grounds and they were mixing them in with regular plastics that they were recycling. And so basically they were fusing them together, and then you've got this horrible situation where then that plastic can't be recycled again, and then you can't recover the organic material. So it's basically just wasting both of those materials.
Yeah, I can chip in here. I find that a lot of times many sort of these initiatives towards having these organic materials are often really just products of greenwashing, where the design itself, like, it seems very good in theory, you know, reusing recycled materials or certain organic materials and like infusing them with plastics. But it's really important to be wary of sort of the context of use, and I guess really how appropriate it is to be incorporating said material. I think an important question to ask is, you know, is this really necessary? If something doesn't need to be made out of, let's say, this new plastic with the infused organic materials, perhaps it's not really a good idea to introduce this new material into the sort of waste stream. And yeah, sort of building back on that point, whether or not things are really necessary and appropriateness to context, I think that moving forward with a lot of material science and developments that I've been sort of following casually over time, I find that there's a lot of room for growth with things like algae, mycelium, sort of these alternate organic materials that we see in nature and that we're only now sort of starting to see how we can incorporate into our design products. But I think for sure that with different materials, there will definitely be different properties that we should be expecting to work with, and thus having different expectations for the products that we produce. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of merit into looking into it and moving forwards, just considering how the world is changing and how the materials that we have available will be changing as well.
Great, thanks very much. Now, we've been going for around about an hour here with this panel discussion, so I want to kind of wrap it up. But before we wrap it up, some of the panelists are still students, but being here at UniSA, at the home of industrial design in South Australia, I was interested in the panels, if the panel has any tips, tricks, things that student product and industrial designers of today should be looking at. Anna's wondered about the online collaboration versus in-person collaboration, and if that is something that we think is the new normal. I said to a couple of people, I had a bit of a flashback when this online thing happened. Most of my freelance work for about 5 or 6 years was through a webcam anyway, so I kind of went back to the future. And I think it's one of the things that the students have really benefited from. Andrew Rogers, you've mentioned that you've been doing some online presentations over the past couple of months. I kind of suspect this is going to be a bit of a new normal. But what are the opportunities that comes with that as well? So tips and tricks for product and industrial design students, if you have any, and including you two students who are on the panel, because that's why we picked you for the panel, because you're good students.
I guess thinking about the way you operate and ensuring that you have the flexibility to adapt when something like COVID happens, I suppose, that you can switch to an online platform, change your meetings to that, switch your presentations to that, your collaboration, what you can do remotely. I guess, yeah, having that flexibility in your business to change materials in your supply chain or anything that you might need to adapt to, I guess, building in those sort of fail-safes.
I think one of the most important things is to find the youngest person in your family and see if they can work out what you've designed and how it works, and then find the oldest person in your family, because I guarantee that your nana is going to be the most critical of anything that you designed and done work on. And if they can understand it, you're pretty much right that you've got the design right. So find old people and young people to review your products.
I love what Andrew just said, because one of the problems we had during COVID was with prototype testing. We were hoping to, go out into the community with the prototypes the students had constructed and, test them on anyone and everyone. But yeah, we had to default back to family members. So that's a terrific idea. And I wonder if there's a way that we could, I don't know, some sort of online network of testers or, product design students who could somehow collaborate online to do that important part of the design process, prototype testing.
I think that it would be valuable for industrial design students to think about increasing their knowledge outside of industrial design into areas such as business management, finance, sales and marketing, so that they can understand the perspectives of their employers, the customers, the end users far more better. So much of the success of a product by the time it gets to market is outside of the actual design itself. And there has been a myriad of wonderful, wonderful designs that were an absolute flop because of aspects outside of the actual industrial design itself that could have been picked up at the time of design. And so if there's an opportunity, particularly in, when you're sitting at home and in lockdown and what have you, to take on additional education that would enable you to understand better the environment outside of industrial design, then I think that would be very valuable.
I would recommend for students, definitely. I think a big thing, especially with COVID now, is just to really try and find the time to talk about your work, talk about your project, like bounce your ideas off of other design students, your professors, but also people who have absolutely nothing to do with industrial design. I find sometimes that the best insight can come from people who just sort of have no context into what you're doing, can really sort of point out any sort of weaknesses or flaws or things that you hadn't considered about your design previously.
I think maybe just to build on what was just said before, I think a lot of what I'm seeing is design we need to be so much more ambidextrous than what we used to be. So I think back years ago, there was your 3D person, your brand expression person, your packaging guy, the retail person. And then I think now with products and then digital experiences merging, the ability to be able to take on UI, UX, think about what is your product in a digital retail environment, what have you. I think being a lot more ambidextrous, not saying you have to do it all, but I think you have to be sensitive to that total product experience, not just being about that 3D object. And I think for me, over the years, the amount of like daily upskilling into these, what I would call emergent or gray zones that are on the boundaries of 3D design, I think we just need to be open to that and, willingness to learn and lean into some of those spaces.
Wonderful, wonderful tips and tricks there. Now, thank you very much to the panel. We'll come back to you in a second. Just before we do wrap up, I'm not sure I want to go near that computer, Andrew, because last time I went near there, it broke. Do you want to try and drive that gallery? We might just give everyone watching on YouTube and here in person just a bit of a preview of the virtual gallery that the students here at UniSA have put together. And I really encourage you to have a look at this if you haven't already done so. A lot of the projects are demonstrating a lot of the themes that have been discussed here tonight from our panelists. So we've got work from all 5 year levels in product and industrial design in this online gallery. So we're trying something different and we're interested in your feedback. So please have a look at this online gallery and let us know what you think. I suspect this is something we may be seeing more and more of as well, and particularly in an augmented reality or virtual reality kind of way in the future. So I'm glad this is actually working now that I'm not near that computer. Andrew, you're doing a great job. Some nice pegs there on screen. But yeah, we've got all sorts of projects from the postgraduate students who are paired up with a client our third year students who have been working on the theme of food waste over the course of this semester. And then some examples from our second and first year students as well. All right, so I want to say a big thank you to the panel. Thank you very much for your time tonight. Sarah, Ed, Andrew, Marty, Andrew again, Ren, and Lisa all the way from Singapore. Thank you very much. Hope to get to Singapore again sometime soon and see you in person. We'll see how we go, and hope to have you back in Adelaide at some point as well. Also want to thank the product design team here at UniSA, who've worked pretty hard all semester to put this together. The students as well who have contributed work to this exhibition, they've done a terrific job in adapting to these conditions and working in this online environment over the past 2.5 months. We're looking forward to working back with students in person and hopefully having an end of year in-person exhibition as well. So stay tuned for more information on that. Also the Design Institute of Australia and Adelaide Design Network for co-hosting this event with us tonight. I think our ambition by hosting this work in progress show to coincide with World Industrial Design Day was to kind of try to bring the local design community together after a couple of months of interesting times, and I think this panel's kind of demonstrated that tonight. For those of you who want to tune in and learn a little bit more about industrial design and industrial designers, I believe Andrew Rogers is doing a live event on Instagram as part of the DIA on Wednesday this week. So head to Instagram and search out the Design Institute of Australia for that. That should be insightful. And I think over the course of the month, there's a lot of industrial design conversation happening through the DIA via Instagram. I also want to just finally say a big thank you to the exhibition grad show committee, which is comprised of mostly third and fourth and fifth year students here at UniSA who've been hard at work on this for the last 2 weeks to put all of the digital content and make this whole event run. And Shane and Tom as well, they didn't want to be on camera tonight, but it's good to see you again behind the camera, Shane, and Tom, thanks for your IT help. All right, so thank you very much, everyone, and look forward to seeing you all in person sometime soon.